Okay, I will talk a little bit about decentralized social networks and ActivityPub. In a little bit of the social aspect and a little bit of the more technical aspect later on. So there's something of both. But before I come to the decentralized social networks, I will talk a little bit about myself. Well, I am Waweic. That comes from was weiß ich. I was a little bit uncreative there. And I like FOSS, so free open source software. And I am somewhat of a Linux nerd. And I actually like Rust too, but I'm too lazy to do anything in it, so I just use Python. Well, let's talk about conventional social networks like Twitter or Facebook. And they got a number of disadvantages. For example, they are huge. That means there can't possibly be enough humans to moderate the whole social network. So they have to resort on algorithms and machine learning, for example, just to filter out the posts or the messages that are maybe not compliant to the rules of the network. You have to pay with the data, and I think I don't tell anyone here anything new with it. And because of that, and because they want even more data, they try to just show you what you prefer to see. Like they filter everything you see for things that you wouldn't want to see, if you understood that right. And that's basically a problem because filter bubbles will form, and so you are going to see just a little bit of the whole spectrum of possible topics you could see normally. And those algorithms and machine learning stuff thingies is everything black boxes. So you can't have a look in there and see why you don't see what you want to see, basically. So my solution to this is obviously free open source software that's financed by its users. And that's important because if you look, for example, at Telegram, that's an open source or more or less open source alternative to WhatsApp. You see that it's centralized at more or less one big server. That's financed by a guy who sold the Russian Facebook, VK, and now has to always give money to that servers just to keep them up and running and to finance the further development of Telegram. So that's nothing you could use for huge things like Twitter replacements or Facebook replacements. So we see that we have to decentralize everything because this makes the fragments of the whole thing much more manageable for individuals or smaller groups of persons. Like, for example, email. Oh, that's embarrassing. I hate slow computers. Good old email is a pretty good example of decentralization. Because everyone can run their own email server, and that's great, because you can be in control of your own data, more or less, and you can watch out that no one accesses it without your permission. Email just works because it has a standardized open protocol. That means if it weren't open, we wouldn't be able to have multiple mail clients on multiple systems maybe that were so intertwined and would be work together that good. And the best thing maybe is even parties with a huge market share like Gmail, for example, can't control the whole network. They can't tell anyone how, for example, the protocol works or how they have to behave on the network. And that's what email makes pretty good. There's even more with decentralization. If we look at new things that are developed, we see that interoperability is getting a much bigger topic now. You could imagine this as if YouTube and Twitter and Facebook were all in one huge network and could all interact with each other. So imagine that you could comment under a YouTube video using your Twitter account, which sounds pretty cool, right? And here should be an image of a network of this, but my GIMP on this PC is a little bit not working. So, using decentralized networks, we can even fight the network effect. You probably know this. I assume that you have already, that every one of you has already told anyone around you to use that new cool technique to communicate, be it Jabber or PGP or something. And the person will always say, nobody except you uses this. Why should I take it? And this can be fought using decentralized networks with open standards, because new networks can always adopt to those standards and use the user base that already exists there. For example, if I were to open a new social network that would work together with Mastodon, I'd already have 1 billion users, which is pretty exciting, right? And now let's look at the more technical side of it, which is more interesting, I think. The protocol that's used to combine those things and that's used to power Mastodon, for example, open source Twitter alternative. ActivityPub has a W3C recommendation status since January 2018, and it was released in about the end of 2016. So it's pretty new. And it's already implemented in multiple platforms, for example, Mastodon or Pleroma, or even PeerTube, which would be an open source replacement to YouTube. And it's a huge cleanup in comparison to previous protocols like OStatus or the Diaspora protocol that were used to have networks that were decentralized but couldn't really interoperate. But how does it work? ActivityPub is basically a protocol for the distribution and publication of activity streams 2.0. For that, it uses basically just HTTPS and JSON-LD, which is essentially an extension to JSON with an extendable JSON, which I won't explain here because it's a little bit complicated. And we'll have a look at the distribution of messages later. But before that, we'll look at the data format of activity streams. Activity streams is the definition of how to use the activity vocabulary that's also defined by the W3C. It's extendable by other vocabularies too. That means if you think, okay, there are some functions that I would like to have in the social network, you could just write them yourself and they would work with it. And it already contains most things that are needed for social interaction. For example, the representation of likes or dislikes and following and unfollowing is already represented there. That's pretty easy with JSON-LD, because JSON-LD allows the definition of the context, so the vocabulary and the activity streams can be defined as something that you refer to with your data. It's based on models that we will have a clearer look on now. There are basically 4 main types of models: the object, the actor, the activity, and the collection. And there are more, but that's a lot, and I will not have the time to explain them all. The object can be basically everything. It can be a book, a car, but also a tweet or YouTube video. And you refer to it using an ID, which is an IRI, which is an internationalized resource identifier, which is basically the same as an URL. An actor is a subtype of an object, and it is someone who can carry out an activity. Like it can be a human or a company or a service or something in this direction, like something that can be active. The activity that's carried out by the actor is pretty interesting, because it can basically be anything you do. It can be the like on Facebook, it can be that you read a book, and it can be that you compose a message to someone. And then there are the collections that are also a subtype of the object, and basically just contain more objects that can also be collections. Which is pretty interesting, because with this you can, for example, store your followers as a collection. Or there is even a special collection that contains theory all users of the whole network over multiple servers. And this is pretty useful to define visibility of special messages. The whole ActivityPub distribution and federation. Federation is the term for sending messages between servers. Is based on inboxes and outboxes. This part in the middle is basically the server, and a user can get and post to it, and the rest of the world in form of other servers can also get and post to it. Which means that if a server is just to implement one of those parts, it will work too. There are, for example, servers that don't use the sites on the user side get and post and just federate with other servers. For example, a blog that always pushes messages to Mastodon doesn't have to interact with users. This is actually pretty easily understandable. In the actor, there are endpoints defined also with an IRI that you can see here at my account on Mastodon. And using these IRIs, I will now show you how this actually looks on the server side. So for that, we will have a little look onto my Mastodon account, which is here, and we will post a message. So I will just say, hello, ActivityPub. And you see it's been posted to the server. And now we can have a look using this little Python script on my own ActivityPub feed, if you want to express it like this. You can see that it has a header defined to just accept application and activity plus JSON, which tells the server to not send us the web page, but the actual data that would be exchanged in a normal exchange with another server too. So we can just get our own actor, as you see here with the URL that was just defined in the slide here, which is just the ID I have on this server, and which stays the same. So we will get this, and it's always a get, never a post or something. And you can already see here, there's my inbox defined, my outbox. Also a username I have on that server. And that's pretty important, a public key that's managed to verify that I posted the message and not someone else. Using this outbox, we can have a look at what I have written. This is also pretty easily doable, like we just write outbox. And now I will put a more after it, because we won't see the beginning instead. So, as you see here, there's a context. That's something JSON-LD needs. And as you can see, up there, the activity streams definition is included. So that means that basically every value that's assigned a type refers to that. And as we see here, that's an ordered collection, which is basically the same as a collection, but with a defined order. And we have to enable paging to see our actual posts. Which is also implemented in the activity streams spec. And now we see those ordered items there. And in this list, the first item is an activity of the type create. I basically created something. It's being sent to the public. As we see here, this is the special collection I talked about. And it's also sent to my followers, in case they want to know something about what I have posted. And here is the object that I created. And as you can see here, it has the content, hello ActivityPub. And that's basically how servers communicate with each other. The server, mastodon.social, has now also posted this activity that we just saw to every server that that I have in my followers list. Like as you can see here, it's also forwarded to my followers. And their servers are saved, and it's posted to their inboxes too. Well, that was basically a quick overview over what decentralized networks are and why they are cool and why ActivityPub is cool and how it works. And I hope it was not too fast and not too understandable. Well, yeah. Thanks for your, what's it called? Aufmerksamkeit. Attention, thanks. Well, in case I have still time left, are there questions?
Does it allow HTML? Or does it allow like basically anything you want in the content?
That's pretty interesting, yes. That is also defined in the spec. You can basically send any data you want, but you should, it should be something common, and you should normally define also the type of that content. So the content type that's also existing in this ActivityPub. And
like videos, define the min type at the beginning and dump it?
You wouldn't do that. You would just say, okay, the file lies there. And that's also okay. You can, instead of posting an object, nearly always post a link to an object. Like you can see in my where is it? My actor. I have an icon there somewhere that I will just see with a more. This emoji is a definition for Mastodon. Mastodon isn't really following the specs sometimes. It's pretty annoying. Yes, well, but it's Federation works. And I don't see my icon here because I haven't defined an icon on this account. Well, that's the show effect. Yes, sure.
Sorry if it's too much into what is the actual message here, but why is it called preferred username?
Yes, there is no guarantee that you have unique usernames. The only thing that has to be unique is your ID. This preferred username is going to be sent to another instance, for example. And I can show you actually.
So someone on example.com could have the same username?
Yes.
Well, then still, why label it as the preferred username?
That's
Maybe
defined in the spec.
Username?
There is another username, name too, that have to be unique. But the preferred username, it doesn't have to. For example, I can show you, if I take another account of mine. Chaos.social is a pretty interesting instance that's made from members of the Chaos Computer Club for other members of the Chaos Computer Club. And as you see here, I have the same username on that instance. And that means if they had to be unique, it would give problems on this instance because...
Can you merge accounts?
You can actually say, okay, this account is now there. And as you see, someone favored my status.
Well, like if somebody follows, for example, if I know you,
yeah,
and I want to follow you,
yes,
would I have to follow different accounts? Are you only posting on one account? How would that work if you were on different servers?
I am only posting on one account. You can define that you are also on other accounts, and you can also say in the settings, for example, that you move to another account. And your client is most likely to react to that and also follow my other account. For example, I can show you in the settings if I knew where. You could move to a different account, and that wouldn't transfer the data, but it would say, okay, my account is now there, and sign it with a public key or something.
So that's how you migrate. If you are sick of Mastodon or social and you want to go to something else account, you have to basically say, hey, I'm there now, and everybody that follows you gets a message that you're there.
That's a pretty new function. That wasn't implemented for a pretty long time. So people always wrote as their last toot, okay, people, I'm now at that instance.
For sending a message,
yes.
If I understand it correctly, when you post a message, if you are the implementer of a ActivityPub server,
yes,
do you have to send that message individually to every single account?
I have to. Okay, when you compose a message, you can define to which account it has to be sent. I will have looked at those accounts before. I know them as a server. And if they have shared inboxes, as you can see them here, down here is my shared inbox, and that's just /inbox. Every other user on the instance has this. So you just have to send it to every instance, but not to every user.
Right. Okay.
But you could, if the inbox wasn't there, a shared inbox wasn't there.
So this would allow like the million follower ActivityPub to function efficiently, rather than someone having to press send and send out a million HTTP requests.
Yes. Well, if there were a million other ActivityPub servers on that I had followers, I had to send a million HTTP requests.
Assume there's some level of like congregation on servers, so you don't have to do that.
Well, yeah. And for the future, there could actually something be implemented using the data format we already have, because you can just sign them and they still are the same, to make something peer-to-peer kind of style thing. No, that's fine.
What is the public key used for?
The public key is used for the signature of the HTTP request, or the headers. When I post something to another server, that it's really verified. Okay, the server has the public key, and sends everyone else has the private key and sends everyone else the public key. So if he composes a federated message to another server, he signs the header of this message with the private key. So every other instance can check that it hasn't been tampered with the message.
Are you able to roll this? If you were to accidentally compromise this key, can you change this without other servers freaking out?
Change the key.
Yeah.
The public key is completely interchangeable. When I could actually show you, because I have a problem in my own ActivityPub program here.
Lock yourself out.
I could just okay, it would take maybe 2 minutes or something. I need to start my Nginx because it wouldn't work instead. Wouldn't work else. Yes, and it's actually pretty practical.
We found this 4chan person.
Yeah, but I think it's probably the most taken username. So that's pretty practical because if I save my username in the file, I had something pretty special. It could lead back to me. So that's useful.
I hope your SSH isn't open to the outside.
So
that one might be in the list though.
Where do I actually have this? It's in simple Python ActivityPub, and now we can do export / was war's? Simple environment develop environment moment.
Environment.
Yeah, thanks. Well, it needs to be okay. So now Flask and should start up. And it didn't start up. Okay, I will just kill all Flasks. Wait, I just kill all Pythons.
Life goals.
What? Kill all uninteresting aspects.
Kill Python. Yeah, sure. Wow. That's actually quite
an endangered species.
So now it should be able to start, and it still doesn't start.
Using your bot?
Huh?
Is Nginx using your bot?
No, Nginx is using the port 443, and I have port 5000 used on. Wait. There's a lot. Why is there so much?
There's one.
Not that much.
Well, does it say? It says 5000, and I've killed all Pythons, didn't I?
Kilo minus 9.
Wait. I'm going to do this now. It has to be somewhere.
If you do /, you can do the...
I could also do a PSaux.
That's a fatality.
Okay. But I can just kill all Pythons. I could. Well, I always forget if I have a start on my system, so now it's running.
Okay.
So I will just type ruby send.rb, which is a script that Gargrin, the original programmer of Mastodon, provided to me over the internet, and so yeah, it was a tutorial stuff. And there is the right public key inside, and it signs the right message, but it says error 500. So obviously, it's not my fault this time. But if it had worked, and I fought with this problem yesterday for hours, it would give me 401 and say that my key was the wrong key. And I would, in that time, get 3 requests in that window here, and it would 3 times say something like, "Hey, actor there, do you have your public key? And do you have your? Are you even existing?" Because it just didn't know if it was really me, because the key was obviously not fitting, and there was something strange. Well, I think that was that, and thank you for your attention.